just really excited about the opportunities that are before us. Because of the generous support of you and our sponsors and our members, we're able to continue to offer opportunities at no cost to families. This is why we do what we do.
Thank you for visiting our channel. Please subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button. You can also click on the bell, which will notify you by email when a new video is posted. That way you're able to stay in touch with us and get the latest updates.
Hello everyone, I think we're about ready to start. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn program. My name is Joanne Bewig. I'm president of the board of directors of the Red River Valley Asperger Autism Network, and our other members, board members, I had raised hands just a minute ago. Thank you for being here as well. We are a nonprofit organization whose mission is to empower, support, educate about, and advocate for people on the autism spectrum and their families. We hold a number of events to help people on the spectrum engage in the community and learn with peers. We also have support groups for families. The format for today is a brief overview of the topic, followed by a question and answer session. Today, our presenter is Dr. Camille Brandt, who is a professor at MSUM, am I correct? Or maybe I should let you introduce yourself. Why don't I let you introduce yourself, because she does some really interesting things in the community with art and the connection with autism. And we asked her to come and talk a little bit about this avenue of expression.
When I think about autism, I think of it through many different lenses. My older brother, had he been born in the last 10 years, he would certainly have been identified as a student on the spectrum. As it was, because we grew up in the 1970s, a very small town, he was bullied terribly, ostracized. It was a very traumatic childhood for him, and I was kind of his advocate, and I was a person who stood up for him and looked out for him, and really just learned to, I guess, see my brother for who he was as a person and not see some of the behaviors that other people were seeing, and he was targeted for many of those behaviors. And then as an adult, then I got married, and my husband had a son from a previous marriage who was on the spectrum, and so he and I were both involved with the identification and then supporting him throughout his elementary, middle school, high school, and transition into adult years. So I've had a very rich experience with that as well, and so thankful to have that to contrast what my brother was able to access versus what our son has been able to access. It's been really exciting. My career path took me into education. Taught elementary education, moved into special education very quickly, became a strong advocate for inclusive education, and became very interested in autism quite early in my educational career. I was told by a professor, you'll never meet someone with autism, it's that rare. And when I was first teaching special education, I had one student identified on the spectrum, and he was the only one in the district identified. So people would come in all the time to observe him, administrators, paraprofessionals, teachers from around the region. So this is what autism looks like.
Did they ever say, this one looks familiar?
Yep. But this person actually had on paper autism. You know what I mean? Whereas everyone else had all these different. So yeah, it was like this very much awakening, and everybody was talking about how in that district, now there's one, oh my gosh, next year there were 4 children. What's in the water? Everybody was like really concerned that there was an epidemic, and really, we were giving voice to people who we should have been amplifying their voices, because they had voices, they had experiences, but we were all of a sudden seeing them, but maybe not really seeing them the whole time, and giving them the services that they were needing. We were talking a little bit before how often have we heard, that child needs to learn to make better choices, or that child needs to learn this and this and this, versus let's take a look at the environment, let's take a look at the traits of autism, and let's take a look at the levels and types of support that can help the students be successful in many different environments. So my history as a practical practitioner in education covered and spanned several decades. I did pursue my master's in special ed and then my doctorate to work as in curriculum and instruction, and my focus was on autism, and my dissertation was parent perspectives of the IEP process and product. As a practitioner, I was always kind of, aren't we supposed to be writing this IEP together? And shouldn't we be focusing on the individual needs of the students? And I always wanted to know the parents' perspective, because a lot of times in meetings, parents are called, Mom, what do you think? And kind of know, we all have names, and we might want to be called by our names, and we might want to contribute before the IEP is done. And so I just really wanted to research what parents thought about that. So I surveyed a ton of parents in North Dakota and was just even more intrigued with that. I was hired at Minnesota State University Moorhead. I wrote and developed all the ASD classes for their undergrad and graduate program. And then with budget cuts, they cut the whole program. So Moorhead State no longer offers any autism classes, which is very heartbreaking. So currently, I did decide to leave MSUM because I really wanted to focus on autism. And I'm currently teaching classes for Bemidji in their autism program. And I also teach classes for Pacific Oaks in California, which is their inclusive education program, which I really believe that we need to train teachers to understand ASD and understand what is inclusive education. What really is it? So that's kind of my history and background. Another piece of my history is Montessori education. My family and I founded a Montessori school 10 years ago. It's an inclusive Montessori school. It's in South Fargo. We've had children attend the school who have multiple levels of needs. We've got children with speech language needs, occupational therapy needs, children on the spectrum, children deaf, hard of hearing, but also children who are neurotypical and so forth. So it's a very inclusive setting. It's also very culturally diverse. So in this environment, I've been able to do some deep observation of very young children who were showing red flags of autism starting at age 2 and 3 and 4. And I want to share one story that really led us to this program. I was working with a little boy who was new to the United States, and his family were English language learners. They were very fluent in several languages from their home continent. So as this boy came to school and we were getting to know him, of course what stood out were some of these behaviors that seemed to be interfering with his ability to socialize. He didn't seem to have very many interests. He preferred to stand in a corner and literally walk in circles and kind of mumble. He liked to take things out and line them up and put them away. So classic red flags. But he was also a second language learner, and we thought, let's just observe, observe, observe. But over the next few months, there was no language developing, either in his home language or in English. He wasn't reaching out to peers. He wasn't responding to his name. He was very sensitive in many areas. And so we were meeting with parents and saying, this is some information you might want to take to your pediatrician. And we all know the process of identification. He was identified as on the spectrum. His parents were very concerned, and they thought we'd have him leave the school. We said, no, absolutely not. No, this is the best place for him. He's learning, he's engaging, we're seeing he's getting more comfortable. One day, I was watching him with a big easel pad and some yellow paint, and he was just doing circles. And he chose to do that for a long time, and every day he would do that. Well, within 2 weeks, this is a Montessori school, so children can choose their works and do them over and over again. I don't want you to think we're neglecting the poor child. But he chose to paint. And after about 2 weeks, I went over and looked what he was doing, and it was no longer a big circle. It was a complete Volkswagen bug. And this is a child who hadn't used any language, who had made no eye contact, who didn't even give an indication that he was necessarily aware of what was going on around him, but he painted a perfect yellow Volkswagen bug. And his first word the week after that was car. And so we noticed that, okay, so his language, one of his languages is art. And so we just supplied him with lots and lots of art supplies. And he started making things out of clay and building Lego structures and house. And when he would build something, but he wouldn't just build it once, he built many, many, many times, and it would change and evolve and grow, and then the language would come out. And we also then designed an interactive art experience for a small group to get them into the museum. So we gather at the museum at the beginning. We have an interactive experience where we would look at a piece of art, and the children would sit, and then we would bring things for them to handle that they might see in the piece, such as stones or fabric or pieces of wood, or we might have a fan blowing or some quiet music playing. And as we planned these activities, a lot of the families said, oh, my child, this doesn't sound like something they would like. We've replicated this experience to make a piece of art highly tied to senses. We just finished our 8th class last week. And the children, it's like, they just sink into the ground. And we put the piece of art up with a frame and we move it over. And the language that comes out, it's just been a beautiful experience. And it really gets the children engaged and acclimated to this very peaceful environment that's very visual, very low language. And then we follow the child to the museum. We let the child lead. We go to the gallery, and in front of each piece of art, we have activities that tie into what they're doing. So for example, this is a perfect example. There was a piece at the museum this week that's called Reflections. And on the floor in front of it, in the gallery, we have a large rectangle taped off, and inside of it, lots of magnetic tiles that have different colors of glass, so they can build reflective pieces of art that look like a painting. We had a beautiful piece of tapestry, and the children could sit on the floor in front of that, and they could add to this. It's very lovely. 5 different children worked on this. They could work on it as long as they want to, then they could go to the next center or station. They could take their time in the gallery. And I ended up buying this and donating money to the program because I think it's just one of the most beautiful things. I'm going to pass this around to you. You can see that the different textures, and really as the children are going from area to area in front of the art pieces, there's an adult sitting there. And again, we're not necessarily talking to children, but we're modeling and we're asking them questions. One little boy was sitting in front of a painting for so long, and he kept saying over and over to himself, "Gonna get in trouble, gonna get in trouble, gonna get in trouble, gonna get in trouble." And then his mother came over, and I didn't say anything. His mother looked at the painting for the longest time and listened to him. And then she pointed. In the very back of this painting, there was a sofa. It was the interior of a house. And there was a boy laying on the couch with his shoes on. And she said, and I hardly even thought, she said, he has his shoes on. He needs to get off the couch. And he just grinned. I mean, he was just staring at this painting. And I think he sat for 15 minutes enjoying this painting. He looked so calm and happy, and it was just wonderful. So he chose to sit versus, do one of the activities that to tie the art to, again, something sensory. Each of the activities we design based upon the needs of the student. And so I think I want to show you some of these if that's okay, because I want to give you an idea of the kinds of activities that are hands-on that were tied to the art to pull the students into the art experience. And as I'm doing that, I want to share that our typical turnout is anywhere between 5 and 10 children and families. Sometimes they bring a friend, sometimes they bring a sibling who's not on the spectrum. Many of the children are low language or use assistive technology to communicate, and every experience has been just beautiful. The age range has been from 4 to 10, although this last weekend we had a 17-year-old join us, and he had a wonderful time. It was just amazing. Okay, so I want to show you some of these. Let's see. Oh, here it is. No, I don't know how to open this pen. Ah. Got it? Okay, well, I'm just going to leave this up so you can see we've had many communications about planning the event between the director, and I'll pass this around because this is what I want to show you on the big screen. But, so when the children first came in, for example, we wanted this to be very hands-on. So as a group, they got a bag of nature supplies, and then they all participated in building this. It was all stones and rocks and feathers and leaves, and then we had the sound of water in the background. Then we studied a piece of painting like that. And then here's the centers. So we had a canoe to look at where things were inside of it, and then we made these boxes with nature inside it. They could go inside and feel it and manipulate it. This is probably a 10-foot sculpture, and then we had similar materials that they could build sculptures next to it. There was, this was a reflective piece, and then we also had a piece where they could take stones and make pathways with them. And then this, of course, is a type of the weaving based upon the weavings. And then we had different water activities as well, which was wonderful. The children loved the water exploration works, because everything about this exhibit tied to the elements. I just really wanted to show you the level of planning and commitment that went into this by museum staff, volunteers. The students who were my students, they've been graduated for several years. They're still involved. So Camille, Michaela, Jody, and myself, and the museum folks and all this, we have had just a wonderful experience in planning. So after the students leave the gallery, where they have been able to go through the centers, then we have a transition time downstairs with snack. And we poll the parents ahead of time and ask, what kind of snacks does your child like most? We have all kinds of choices there for them to make. Once the snack is done, the children, we've observed them mingling around that area. The parents get a good time to talk to each other then as well. Then we move into the gallery experience. So in the gallery, the children then can go to a table and all the materials are set out and they can build whatever the main project is. We've made mobiles, sculptures, paintings, clay materials, and everything is set up for them. But again, the goal of the experience is not just that they get to come in to the Plains Art Museum and go to a classroom with a friend or family member or parents and create a piece of art. It's that the whole environment is structured just for them. Everything is prepped for them. So the transitions are very smooth. They can move in, choose where they want to sit. The materials are right there. They don't have to go and get this and go and get this and go and get this, because we know transitions can be a challenge. So we decided, let's just take the transition out. And then time frame. How often do we hear from our children, I'm not done yet, or I want to be done with this, and we don't honor it. The children can work at this as long as they want to. They can make one project, they can make 3 projects. They can work for 3 minutes or 30 minutes, and we honor that. And we let families know that right up front. You don't have to say, you have to sit, we're not done. Or, wait a minute, you're done. You already made one, walk away. We give them that gift of time, and we honor that they need to go through that process over and over again. We want to give them that opportunity. So the other thing that we do is, again, we choose the classrooms that have the opportunity for natural light versus the glaring light. We choose the gallery classrooms that have low sound versus a lot of echo. And we have all the supplies for cleanup out and ready to go. And we've got volunteers around that we're observing and stepping in and stepping out so that they can be as independent as possible. So the art activities, again, are fairly low language, high experience, very hands-on, very visual, very tactile. As I said, we started off with that initial planning, and we had a really good turnout. We've replicated the experience. We just finished our 8th class, and we're moving into our 9th class on April 29th. It's called Inside My House. We do charge just $10 a family, but we're hoping to get funds to scholarships, so there'd be no cost to it. It's a great experience to come in and spend 2+ hours at the museum with a nice large group activity, a gallery experience, a snack experience with some time for families to talk, and then as much time in our classroom with everything ready for you. As you know, it's just we want the experience to be so family friendly, so child friendly, and I have to say, it has been just such a joy to be part of it, because we have children come in who've never been to a museum before. And their families don't have to find a daycare or a child care provider or use a respite. They can go in with their family and have a wonderful, wonderful morning and not worry about being looked at if their child is making noises. That means that they're excited about something. So for example, this past weekend, there was one of the little guys was talking about, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And we knew that what he was saying was, it's taking too long, I'm gonna go to the next area. So instead of saying, quiet, 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 we just looked at his schedule and said, here's where we are now. When are we going? Let's look at the visual timer. Okay, boom, done. And he just got it. We create the experiences so we can understand their language. Now again, we chose art and galleries because the environment can be very conducive to that peaceful, quiet, reflective, take your time, take in visuals, and think about the world around you through your senses. And the Plains Art Museum has been just wonderful and very, not just accommodating, they're just on fire, excited about this. And so the plans are to continue the program, and we'd hope to offer something this summer as well, and again in the fall and twice in the spring. We're always looking for families to give feedback, to come in and help us plan, or to suggest events. And one other thing that some of those involved have wanted to take this into the community in different places. Go to some of the downtown restaurants and say, hey, would you have a family-friendly night here at different restaurants? Or the Fairfield Public Library. Would they have a story time that's inclusive? With all of these things, though, comes training, teaching, and really expecting that things might not go as planned, and so you have to be ready to roll with it. Before any of this happened at the Plains Art Museum, I went in and gave presentations and in-services to all of the staff at the museum. We looked at every environment, we talked about everything that could possibly, if this goes this direction, what should we do? And so now, because we've gone through that process many, many times, the people at the museum are very comfortable, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take people in the community who are in leadership positions, business owners, managers, wait staff. They have to understand. A lot of families want to take their children to the swimming pools, for example. And a lot of children are asked not to come back to swimming pools because of some behaviors that are misunderstood. And we just have to do a better job, I think, in our community of awareness and acceptance. And then we can move forward with more ideas like this. So our next one, again, is the 29th. We're going to be doing a lot of work with interiors of spaces, and the children are going to be creating sculptures again, and then they take everything home that they make. And Plains has done a great job of promoting on their Facebook pages. We've sent things out to different groups as well, and mostly just awareness. And this is just a great opportunity. I'm not just here to say, come join us. I'd love you to come join us. But I want to let you know that there's some really great people who want to learn more about autism. And they're very open to the idea of learning about Asperger's. And they want to be a support to families and children. And I've just been honored to be part of this particular group. And I hope that this information has been helpful to you as well, because of your community members and parents and grandparents and siblings. I have to share one story before I open up for questions. I was presenting at a conference in New York 2 springs ago, and I happened to be talking about this program in one of my presentations. And 3 parents came up to me afterwards, and these were Manhattan mothers, and they were probably 15 years older than me, maybe 20 years older than me. Their children were grown adults, and they were still living at home with them. All 3 of these mothers had children who were on the spectrum. And they shared with me, one of them shared with me that their son, who at that time was in his 20s, loved clay. And he could make beautiful pottery. He could make beautiful things. So she found a class that was close to their home. It cost $500. But she enrolled him in this class because she wanted to give him an experience outside of the home. And after the first night, when she went to pick him up, they said he couldn't come back, he wasn't welcome. And they weren't going to give her a refund. And she said, she was really surprised because she said, But were there some behaviors? Was he rude? Did he you know, why? Basically why? And they said, well, he has a disability. And you need to disclose it on the form that you filled out. And the teacher's just not comfortable with working with people who have disabilities. And so she said she'd quit if we didn't say that your son couldn't come back, and we just can't lose her. So not only did they kick him out of the class that he loved and was very, could have taken him in so many directions, they refused to give her $500 back. So she was ripped off twice. She was discriminated against because she had a son with a disability. Her son was discriminated against. And really, when we think about autism and the autism spectrum, we really are talking about a human rights issue. These children and families, we have rights to our community environments. We have rights to get into programs and to be successful and to fail, but to try, to at least be invited to the table. And I think that's what we're doing at the Prince Art Museum. We're saying, come on in. We're gonna do our best to meet your needs, and we're gonna adjust as we go. It's been really successful, and I'm hoping that this stays for a long, long, long time. So I just want to share this with you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm open to any questions that you might have. Yes.
You've been speaking about visual arts. Can you talk at all about the performing arts and their benefits to people on the spectrum?
There's a lot of research on the benefits of music therapy, dance therapy, and not just therapy. We can move out of that, really, and just say dance and music. The thing is, a lot of us as adults will be saying, I'm not good at art, or I'm not a good dancer. You know, we're told that by the people around us. And eventually we find that you have to take a class to be good in art, and a class to be good at music. And the truth is, these classes are good because they get people into the community. We need more classes that are open and dances that are open to everybody. There is good research behind that. There's a really wonderful documentary, maybe many of you have seen it, called Autism the Musical. And
I'm sorry, what was that called?
it's called Autism the Musical. It is based upon a woman who adopted a child who happened to be on the spectrum. And his language was movement and art. And the more quirky art, very modernistic things, think Blue Man Group, that kind of spoke to him. So she started talking to other parents, and pretty soon they had this whole group of children. Some could sing, some played the viola, some played the cello, some acted, and they wrote a play. And then they produced the play and they put it on. It's called Autism the Musical. And in it, the documentary is wonderful because you get to know each family and their struggles and their successes, but the children shine. And that program has been replicated a lot in New Jersey where she lives. I'm not aware of anything here. I know some families access music therapy, but I don't know, like we've got the School of Rock in town. I would love to know more about that. Is it inclusive? I don't know. TNT Fitness is a lot with movement. When I look on their website, I know they've got special classes for children identified, but I don't know if they're inclusive. I don't know. I'd have to do more homework on that too. So we've got some like-minded people in town who are saying, yeah, the art should be open to everybody, but I've never been to a Trollwood production where there's necessarily a cast member who perhaps is on the spectrum. I don't know, but I think that we're kind of at the forefront of the next. We had to fight for so long to get our children into the classrooms. I remember when I was first teaching, and I believe in inclusive education, this is going to really show my history and age. My principal said, you can ask people if they'll take the kids, but if they say no, I'm not going to make them. So, because I had a self-contained classroom. I had kids in my classroom from all over the district. They were bused into our school. They couldn't even go to the neighborhood schools. And I remember going from door to door saying, can so-so come in just for a half-hour day of reading? And if they said no and shut the door, it was no. I only found 2 or 3 teachers that whole year, so I would load children in there throughout the day for reading and writing and math, and that's taken 30 years. And now we're seeing children more in the classroom, but now we've got to push that into the community and push it beyond maybe special baseball. But let's look at the baseball programs. Why? You know, we're all shocked that the girls' baseball team, right, got kicked out of that. Was it baseball or football? Right now in the news, this girls' team made the finals for their state, and they're kicked out because, according to the state rules, it's a boys-only sport. Okay, so I don't know the whole story. You can Google that. But if I had a child on the spectrum who wanted to play in my neighborhood little league, I might be referred to the special baseball team. And I think we got to stop that. I don't know. I think that we need to educate more and become more inclusive-minded in the community sense and start knocking some of those barriers down. So I agree with you. A long answer to a really short question. There's a lot of research that shows the arts are a wonderful way for children, regardless of disability or not, autism or neurotypical. It allows them to express themselves, to communicate, to express emotion, to express joy, and to engage with the world around them. So I would love to see more arts programs. I know of a young woman in town who she teaches ballet, and she's trying to get families to come into her ballet classes, you know, of all ages and abilities and skills. So I think she's really inclusive-minded. Oh, we're close to our time. No.
Well, this organization completely agrees with you about community access for individuals on the spectrum and finding ways to help make that happen.
Right.
Because they deserve to be a part of the community and are. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what we as parents and family members can do using art at home with our kids, because I think you made a really clear point that this is a means of communication.
Very
and
much so.
I have an example, I think I told you earlier, about my grandson when he was in first grade, and he came home from school. He had not been diagnosed yet with autism, but he came home very upset, locked himself in the room, and he was not going to talk to anybody. He was banging on the walls. He was just, and I thought, well, this isn't going to work. So I was there at the time. So I slipped a piece of paper and a crayon under the door, and I said, "Show me." I just said, "Show me." And he drew this picture. He claims he doesn't like art, but he drew this picture and he slid it back out to me. So clearly he wanted to communicate. And I said, "Ooh, this picture looks angry." And he said, "Yes, it is." And with that, then it went back and forth a couple of times. And the next thing you know, we were talking about it. So he was able to tell me about what it was that had caused it. And he's a child who says he doesn't like art. And yet he's able to use it to help communicate. So anyway, what are some things that we as families can do to help our kiddos?
What I would say is every successful teacher and intervention that I've seen in place has always started with the child. That get to know that child as a person. And you know your children, you know your family members, you know their interests. And sometimes by looking at them and listening to them when they don't know we're watching them, give us clues into their interest areas. And I'm going to tell a short story before I answer that, because I think it'll pigtail into it. There was a little boy I knew who, he would go in his classroom every day at the school, and again, his language was very, he used a lot of repetition, a lot of what we call echolalia, okay? But there's a code to that, right? So it is not, there's always a function to this. And his teacher had the Harry Potter books out, and some of the children were reading them. He was listening, but they didn't know that he was listening necessarily, because what he looked like didn't match what they thought listening looked like. So he was having what they call a meltdown one day. And so I happened to be there, and he was barricaded in the corner of the room, and he happened to get the window off. And they were afraid he was going to climb off the window and respond. Okay. So the vice principal was there, the principal was there, the emergency room team was there from the building, the teacher was there, and here's this little guy in the corner like a caged. It was just like, I thought this is just going to go from bad to worse. He kept saying over and over again, "It's so sad that Harry Potter's mom died. It's so sad that Harry Potter's mom died." That's all he said over and over and over again. And I said, and they were like, "Oh, he's just saying this Harry Potter stuff. It doesn't make any sense." I'm not saying that I know all the answers, okay, but I bet you some of you are thinking along the same line as me. I said, "What's going on home with his mom right now?" "Oh, she left for 3 months." "Ah, let's go get his mom's picture and bring it in." Got his mom's picture in. He sat down and started crying. And then the teacher went over and sat down. "Do you miss your mom?" "I miss my mom." And then he completely diffused. So the stress of all of this and his behaviors, he was doing his best to communicate. He was using literature to do it, Nobody knew he was even listening to the stories, but they resonated within him. So I think one thing that I suggest to parents is, let's not define what your child is interested in. Let's kind of put the buffet out and keep it out. And maybe change up the menu once in a while, but see what they go to. And really, families, if families have things in their house for them to explore, different kinds of music and movement, different kinds of stories on tape, or read aloud, even if you don't know they're listening, you might see them gravitate. You might see some behaviors in the language coming out. You might see some choices that they're making. Art supplies, paint, finger paint, paints with brushes, collage materials, glue, Play-Doh. You can make Play-Doh too that's no scent, if that's something that, and different textures as well. But something I've seen some children do, at first they don't like the texture, then they're interested in it, and all of a sudden they can't get enough of it. But if the first time they touched it and we said, ooh, they don't like Play-Doh, we're done with that, I'd be denying them the experience. Maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, they'd be creating something amazing. I once saw a child playing with Play-Doh who used to not touch it. I looked at what he had made. I called the teacher over and said, look at this. What does this look like? He made a complete replica of the internal organs of the human body out of Play-Doh. You could see everything, the esophagus, the lungs, stomach, pancreas, intestine. And this was a little boy who hated Play-Doh. But it was always out. And then it made sense. He was always interested in the human body. He'd always pull nonfiction books off and it looked like he was just looking through the pages, but he was curious. So have a variety of nonfiction and fiction materials, books and magazines. And don't think of reading just as, the academic reading. We all read and look at pictures. We can get a lot of meaning from pictures. So to have pictures at a child's height. Kind of think outside the box as to what is art. And read about other children or families and just have a lot of experiences. I just think to make it positive, and then to do it yourself too. To sit down and paint or color or stitch or weave and just see what happens over time. I just think that in households, if you have an area that you don't care if stuff gets on the wall or the floor, because it'll clean up. Kind of let go of that, if that's something. And not everybody cares about that. I don't. My mother-in-law was like, too messy. But I was like, it washes off. You can give them experiences, even if you're not taking them to the Plains Art Museum. But there's a lot you can do at home. And a lot of times transitions, especially for young children, tie music into it, or tie sounds into it. You can find really peaceful, I should have brought this in. It's something from Indonesia that I have that you just tap it once and it just makes this beautiful, sustained, very low hum. And it's an arresting sound. It makes you just stop and it's very evocative. And there's lots of things that make sounds that you could pull into the home too. And just give experiences. And I think a lot of it's opportunity. And again, not defining that person's interest or skill, and give them that gift of time and that gift of experience. If that little guy who was painting the circles, if I had thought, I am wasting his parents' money by letting him paint circles for an hour, if I would have done that, he wouldn't have painted that Volkswagen Bug. I don't think he would have started. He wouldn't have emerged as fast as he did. I am confident of that. So I would say, if you're going to invest in any things at home, and we're buying technology and good constructive things and blocks and Legos, and go to the arts too, and have some stuff out once in a while and see what happens. And take advantage of programs like this, because it's a very, very safe place to be a child and to be a family and to just explore. And it's a great place to connect with other families too. Does that kind of answer that? Mm-hmm. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm still learning, but it's really exciting. And I'm really excited about what I see in the children every week. I'm really excited. This little guy, I'll tell you one last story. This little guy, he was in front of the reflective piece, and he was kind of working, and he looked up, and he looked down, and he looked up, and it just caught his gaze. And I happened to be there, and I said, what do you think of that? And he just said, I don't know, but I like it.
Thank you very much.
I love that.